Hey everybody, I am your host, Nicole Mendes on 10 Teams 2 Rings for the Big 12 Conference on the Softball America Networks. I cannot wait to get started with you guys. I feel like every week we're getting closer and closer and closer to Big 12 tournament, postseason, and one day, someday soon, the Women's College World Series. It has been a fun ride so far, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this week. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to this video. Make sure to like and subscribe to Softball America. Leave some comments below. Let me know what you guys want to talk about. But today we are going to get into everything. We're going to go around the horn. We're going to talk about the athletes that we have seen just really perform in the Big 12. But before we get into all of that, we have a guest. So this week we are going to be joined by Ilana Ugbayani. I think I said that right. Let me know if I did or not.
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect. Well, how are
I'm
you
good.
today?
How are you?
I'm doing great. I mentioned this briefly before we started, and I was saying, yeah, I think I tell everybody this, but I did some online stalking. Who hasn't been there? Raise your hand, right? Everyone's been there online stalking, and I came across a couple of really interesting things. So we're going to talk softball. We're going to get there in a moment. But before we do, I just wanted to ask you, give me you and your teammates' TikTok's name, and then tell me a little bit about it.
Our TikTok name is Swaggy Cougar Girls. So me and my teammate Tristan, we started it last year during the fall. So we were just freshmen, and we were like, let's make a joint TikTok. She actually has no social media. So that is her only social media platform, is our joint TikTok. And yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's crazy. She doesn't have Instagram, Snapchat, and never ever had it. So it's fun having TikTok with her, and we love to learn dances. We were much more active last year. This year, not so. We're going to work on it, though.
Yeah. I expect to be seeing some videos soon. I'm just going to be like, hey, where are the videos? I need some more dance videos. I mean, it's pretty tough for those people who aren't on social media for them to go like, hey, let's make a TikTok. Like, that's pretty rare, I feel like. So you were probably jumping at you're like, yes, let's make a TikTok together.
Yeah, I literally love the idea. And then we were like, what should our username be? And we were like, okay, well, we're Swaggy, and Cougar is our mascot, so we're Swaggy Cougar Girls.
I love that. I love it. Very, very original. It is. It's very original. So another thing that I found while I was online stalking you, I think there was a takeover that you did last year, and I'm gonna let you, I don't know if you need to rant about this, like express yourself, if it's you're like, yeah, I've made my peace with it. But there was something about you thinking Boston was a state.
Oh, no.
And then there is something, you went on a tangent a little bit about Arkansas and how it's not pronounced Arkansas. Let me know, because my roommate in college was Jocelyn Allo, and it's very different growing up in Hawaii versus growing up on the mainland. And some of the stuff that I would ask her, I was like, wait, you don't know this? And it was just so fun. So here's your platform, here's your time. Tell me about that. Any other states where you've been like, what? I don't understand.
That one was, we were just playing a game, and it was like we had to go so fast around. If you messed up, you're out. So it was different categories, and then I just got so nervous that I said Boston. But I definitely know Boston State for sure. And the Arkansas in Arkansas was trying to, like, my explanation, because growing up in Hawaii, we call Panda Express pandas. And everyone is like looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, why do you add an extra S to it? And I'm just like, I don't know, everyone. That's just how I grew up. But everyone's so mad at me when I say pandas. They're like, it's not pandas, it's panda.
Have you had any other things that since coming to college where oh, this is how we always say it, and then people are like, wait, what?
Um, I can't think of the top of my head, but I know that there's just like so many things. Or yeah, like I'd wear slippers and then they think it's my teammates get weirded out that you don't wear socks with it. And I'm like, we don't do that back home. Like
Barefoot,
yes,
barefoot, and then if anything, you wear the slippers, no socks. So
exactly.
gotta let them dogs breathe a little bit.
Exactly. Everyone's like, "You don't play your dogs." I'm like, oh my gosh.
So speaking of back home, your sister is now at BYU. How fun has that been? I mean, I bet whenever you guys first found out, like take me through that and then just where you guys are at now in season.
Yeah, so my coach always asked about my sister just because she played at Berkeley and she did have 2 more years left. So he asked me about her and I just told him a little bit about her and how much like it would be an amazing opportunity to have her play with me and he thought so as well. So once season was over, he ended up calling her up and just talking to her and getting to know her and then he offered her and that is just something that we always like dreamed about. We never thought that it would actually happen, especially with her being 3 years older than me and going to Cal. But because of COVID and her redshirting, that left her with 2 more years of eligibility. So she was able to graduate from Cal and now she's able to get her master's at BYU while playing softball. So it's just incredible. And it's always nice to have family here, especially with Hawaii being so far away.
Yeah. Do you get homesick sometimes? I bet a little bit less this year, but do you ever get homesick?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like sometimes I really miss all my family and my grandmas and aunties and uncles there. But I just miss that. But here I love it feels like a second family here with my teammates, coaches, and especially my sister. So I get a little homesick, but it's not too bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad because being able to have a sister and being able to play with each other, I mean, not many athletes get to do that. That is so cool. Like that's like you said, this is something imagine if what if one day we get to do it and then it's actually happening and because of COVID, because of the red shirt, 2 years, like you guys never could have predicted that or foreseen that. So I just think that's awesome. Whenever I found out, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool to just be able to play with family. So transitioning over to softball. Now that we've got the whole pandas out of the way, the the swaggy cougar girlies out of the way. Let's talk a little bit about softball. So, I just want to start with BYU. Tell me about it because it's a team, at least from my perspective. I always heard about you guys. You guys always went to regionals, but I didn't hear too much. And I don't know. I'm really watching your team this year and just watching the way that you guys play. And you guys are elite. You guys are a dangerous team. Like everyone has to be careful whenever they play you. Otherwise, they might slip up. There's no letting up from y'all's end. Tell me a little bit about the team, about the program.
I would say that I feel like we're a little overlooked, and I feel like we're definitely very, very competitive. Like we come out fighting just because we know that I feel like not a lot of people expect us to win. So we always have that fight mentality just because we go out in the field with really nothing to lose. So we're just here to compete and fight. And I feel like this year's team is really all in, especially with it being our first year in the Big 12 conference. We
Yeah.
came out really excited and eager to make a name for ourselves and ready to compete.
Yeah, and speaking of Big 12, so it's y'all's first year in the Big 12. You have 3 teams in the top 5 that you guys are going up against. You handily beat Oklahoma, and you've had very, very competitive games. Like, you guys have really shown up and shown out, but it's a whole different, okay, we're not playing the same teams. We have to have a different scout. I have to study the game a little bit more, understand who that we're playing. You're traveling to different places. How's that been? I feel like that's been maybe a little chaotic.
It's been very, very crazy. Like, we're traveling much further than we did in the WCC, leaving on Wednesdays, coming back late Saturday night or Sunday early in the morning. And it's really been a hectic schedule with traveling and also playing our midweek games and finding time for
Mhm.
schoolwork and things like that. So it's been very, very chaotic, but I feel like I wouldn't have it any other way because I just love how competitive this conference is. So I just love
Yeah.
competing and we're really playing against the best teams out there, and we love it, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, what better way to get you prepared for postseason? There's 3 teams that will probably for sure be hosting not just a regional, but if they continue to play the way they're playing, they'll host the supers and they'll go to the World Series, right? And you guys, I think of UCF, I think of Baylor. Um, there's a lot of teams, Kansas, there's a lot of teams in the conference that are going to be in the tournament. And whenever you get to play against that, like, man, like that just elevates the competition and it elevates you as hitters, pitchers, defense, everything all around. Can you tell I'm a big fan of the Big 12? But I was just really curious about that because I mean, UCF, and U of H are kind of the first teams to really shuffle, but next year, there's gonna be a lot of movement, there's gonna be a lot of conference realignment, and to the point of, like, it's gonna be chaotic, like, the travel itself, I think, is gonna be the biggest thing, but I was just really curious 'cause I think that's everybody's biggest question mark is, like, how do you handle it? And you guys have been handling it fantastic. You guys have been great with that. Um, you talked a little bit about with all that uncertainty, with all the first times, right? You guys have come out with just a scrappy, like, chip on the shoulder, like, we have something to prove, like, we're on looks, like, we're good too. That kind of feeling. What do you guys talk about? Is there a motto that you have? Is there something that you guys worked on the off season to be able to not just have that, but be able to keep it and maintain it so consistently throughout conference?
Yeah, what I think it was our whole season came off this idea of this movie that we went to in the beginning of the season. It was called Boys in the Boat, and it was. Have you watched it before?
I haven't, but I've heard really good things about it from a ton of different people.
Yeah, so that was our whole mentality. Like, they were not expected to win, and they won a gold medal in rowing. And that's like how our whole mentality of the season is that we're just here and we're with each other and we're all rowing the boat in the same direction. And there was a part in the movie where there was this one guy and he wasn't feeling that well. So he wasn't like rowing the boat like as well as he needed to be. And that was our whole, from then, we all got the idea that if we want to win and we want to succeed and really go as far as we can, we need to all row the boat and we all need to pull in the same direction and we all need to do our ends or role and just be the best teammate that we can be in order for all of us to succeed.
Yeah, man, I love that because that's so true. You could have 8 players really dedicated, and then you could have 3 or 4 who are just kind of not really pulling the weight or not all the way in it, and then that really slows down the momentum that your team has been building and building and building. So being able to have everybody, like you said, rowing the same way, on the same page, with the same, "Yes, this is our end goal," like, that is so hard to get in college softball. And it's so hard to get with a group of girls, period. But then you add on top of a ton of girls together. You had on top of that college softball and just the wear and tear and the grind that goes together. That's not easy to maintain. So for you personally, this will be my last question because I know you have practice here soon, but you personally, your level of play has always been really elite, really high, and it has been fun to watch you as a freshman. You were in your old conference, you were the player of the year. As you've transitioned into the Big 12, you've put up some really great numbers. What is your mindset whenever you're coming in? Because we have some girls who listen to this and they're younger, and it's so hard sometimes to be able to explain how you turn stuff on, right? There's like a flip that switches. Explain to me, how do you get your switch to go on? How do you get that focus?
For me personally, I love competition. So I love to compete to be the best player I can be on the field, best person I can be to my teammates. Like, I think that you can always strive to be better. So like during the game, I'll always work on being better. Like each day, even at practice, it's a new opportunity for me to be better. So that's how I think, how I turn everything on is just trying to be better every day and being better than yesterday. And I would say just the biggest thing for this year, especially changing conferences, I quickly realized that I feel like last year being in the WCC, it was easy to like sometimes I would lose focus. And now in the Big 12 conference, playing in the best of the best, there's no time to lose focus. It's all about winning every pitch. And so if I can't win every pitch, which is because that's like unrealistic, my mentality has always
Right.
been for especially for this year is to win the next pitch.
Mhm. I love that. Oh, man, I love that. That's so good because getting caught up in all of that stuff, like, it's not realistic to think, okay, I'm going to win every single pitch. But if it doesn't, like being able to have that short term memory and go, okay, that's done. Next pitch. Like, let me get this one. Let me get this one. I love that. And it's honestly, it's no wonder that you have a ton of success. I mean, you're competitive. You have a quick memory and you're just so freaking athletic. I think I saw a video the other day of you getting a triple, and I was like, dang, she does it all. It is awesome. So, well, thank you so much. I will see you at the Big 12 tournament and best of luck. Until then, I look forward to cheering you guys on, and I'm a fan of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Oh my gosh. How good was that? Ilana from BYU University came and just absolutely floored me. I knew this was going to be a good one. I was telling my producer before the podcast. I was like, I got a good feeling about this podcast. Like, I have a good feeling. I think the content's going to be great. She exceeded expectations. Just the way that she has talked about that mental side again and again and again. You see those teams where they're really good, but they're not able to have that quick memory and they're not able to bounce back quickly. Like, that is so key and so vital with so many different teams. And then being able to stay locked in. Like, it is hard. If you're a softball player, if you're an athlete at all, you know how hard it is to stay locked in from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. Like, mentally, that is so taxing, and it takes practice and it takes time. And so the fact that she recognized, okay, I'm not locked in enough. How do I get there? And the adjustment that she's made has been incredible. BYU, they are a good team. They beat Oklahoma earlier in the year. And like I said, no one was expecting them to come into the Big 12 conference and do what they've done. And while the record itself might not show for it, they have been just so competitive the entire time. And I'm going to get into it a little bit later just about the Big 12 in and of itself. And yes, there's three teams that are ranked in the top five, in the top 25. But other than that, there's no Big 12 teams. But that doesn't mean anything because as long as they can get into the tournament, whenever you play against elite teams like that, you understand the level that you need to perform at to win. You understand what it takes. You understand where you need to be. And playing against those kinds of teams can only help them as they go into the tournament. So I want to talk a little bit about postseason, Big 12 tournament, just a tad. But before we get there, I want to go around the horn. Um, I don't think we've seen this so far this year. It was a complete sweep all around the conference. So Oklahoma beat U of H 3 times, Texas beat Kansas 3 times, Baylor beat UCF 3 times, BYU beat Iowa State 3 times, and then Oklahoma State beat Texas Tech 3 times. The scores, I think the closest series was the Baylor and UCF, and I think those two teams are really similar. Baylor, they had a very tough start to their conference, and that put them into a pretty big deficit. And they've slowly been chipping their way out more and more. But it was a tight series. UCF, they're ranked higher than Baylor in conference right now, but Baylor, they're coming back, and getting that sweep was huge, big time for them. UCF, another really, really great team and a great addition to the Big 12 conference. But the first game, Baylor won 2-0. Then the second and third game were just 1-0. I mean, those were battles. They were really, really good games. If you're bored during the week and you're waiting for the weekend games to pop up, make sure you go back and watch those. I would recommend those. Those are battles. You could see the pitching, you could see the hitting. And I think that's what it's going to take whenever postseason comes. Going into rankings, Texas still at number one. They have been consistent. They had, like I said, they started off the season. They had about a 3-week period where they had some hiccups and they just were making errors that you wouldn't typically expect them to make. And then they just straightened it out whenever they played Oklahoma State. And from then on, they have been so consistent. They got 2 against Oklahoma. They have been on a roll ever since. I think they're the number one team. They have been so consistent and they've looked really good. Number 2 is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they've had some shakiness, especially on the pitching side. They looked a lot better this weekend. One thing that I would be worried about if I were them is the runners left on base this weekend. They left over 31 runners left on base throughout 3 games. And to me, that's saying those conversion rates, they used to be really, really good. They're still really good at 2-out hitting, but that used to be the dreaded. You get to 2 outs and you can't take a breath because Oklahoma, that's where they scored a lot of their runs against teams last year. I don't feel that quite as much this year. And I think that's where they're really lacking on their run production side of things. But still really good on the pitching side this weekend. Oklahoma State, I I'm just a fan. So the scores from Oklahoma State whenever they played Texas Tech, it was 11-3, 13-0, and 6-4. I'm a fan of Oklahoma State. I think that they are just out there and they look like they're having fun and they look like they're competitive and they want to be there and they want to compete. And whenever the game's on the line and there's big games, they're just going, come on, I want this. I thrive in this kind of environment. I don't think I've seen Oklahoma State be quite like that yet. They, in years past, have played with a chip on their shoulder and then they get into big moments and the pressure just got to them. It's not because they weren't talented, because they have had very, very, very talented teams, but the pressure got put on them and their eyes just got a little big. This year, I don't feel that from them. Yes, they've lost games, but they there's a grittiness to them. There's an expectation to them, even with a young team like OSU, that I wasn't expecting to see as far as mentality, as far as how they carry themselves. And I just I have a really good feeling about them as they head into postseason. In 2 weeks, they are going to match up with Oklahoma, and it is going to be a fun one. I cannot wait for that. And we'll go ahead upcoming matches. So this upcoming weekend, we have BYU at Baylor, or Baylor at BYU. We have Texas Tech at U of H. We have Oklahoma at UCF, Iowa State at Texas, and Kansas versus Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State in Stillwater. To me, I think the games to watch, just the way that this conference has been going and how tight it's been, BYU versus Baylor, that's going to be a really good series. There's going to be battles. Baylor, they, like I mentioned, they're hungry. They're wanting to come back. They're craving that. and they're trying to claw their way back up into the rankings. BYU, they've gotten some big wins, but they've also had a couple losses. The ability to be consistent, they're going to have to get through a really tough mentally Baylor team right now. Oklahoma State versus Kansas. I'm really curious about that matchup because Kansas, they've been swinging it this year. And Oklahoma State, they are no stranger to having some powerhouse themselves. But I think the biggest thing for those two teams actually isn't going to be their offense. I'm curious to see how their pitching is going to go. We've talked to Kansas before, Oklahoma State. I mean, you just watch them and you know they have elite pitching on both sides. And I think whoever has the best game plan pitching wise, and whoever is able to go, okay, this is my game plan A, this is my game plan B, and this is my game plan C. Because it's going to take a lot of adjusting because there's some really, really great hitters on both sides. The team that adjusts first and continues to adjust is going to be the team that comes out on top. And then I think the UCF OU series is going to be really telling. It could go really good for Oklahoma, or it could go really good for UCF. UCF, they're on their home turf. The battle right now between first, second, and third, as far as conference as it is, as rankings go, is tight. So the standings as it is, Oklahoma is leading. They're number 1 in the Big 12. 18-3 is their record. Texas is number 2, 17-4. And then you have Oklahoma State 16-5. So all three of those teams are within one win or loss of another. And Oklahoma, they have a tough end of conference play. They have to go through a UCF team. UCF played Texas hard, Oklahoma State hard. Like there is battles there that you have to be ready for. And they've shown up and they've proven that, yeah, we're here. We're ready for this battle. And I think it's gonna be a really good one. But Oklahoma, they don't have any wiggle room. And if they lose one game and they're tied with Texas, they beat Oklahoma twice. They get the title. So Oklahoma, not that they need to be putting pressure on themselves, but they need to know that if they play their own game, they're gonna be fine. But if they don't, UCF, they're a really good team. They can very well take one away from Oklahoma, even too if Oklahoma is not on top of their game. Like we were hearing earlier in the interview, being able to take it one pitch at a time, one play at a time, next pitch, being able to leave behind what's behind, focus on what's here in front of you. But and then you have Oklahoma State. They are just biding their time because whenever Bedlam comes up, you never know how that series is going to go. It doesn't matter who's ranked what, who's going where, what's this, what's that. They always show up and they always show out. Oklahoma always shows up, always shows out, and they just bring out the best in each other. The competition, the level of play, that's going to rise to the occasion. So Oklahoma, they have a hard end of Big 12 play to be able to get through this. And that is the upcoming matches for the weekend. All of those will be available on ESPN Plus, except for Texas versus Iowa State. That will be available on the Longhorn Network. So I told myself last week the interview was so good, it just ran long. And I told myself I'm going to be a little bit better. And so I just briefly want to talk about the Big 12 conference postseason and just how it is, And so I think we talked about Oklahoma State, just the quality of team that they are. We talked about that OU versus Texas versus Oklahoma State. Like they're all within one of each other. And then Kansas and UCF, like those are the teams that are just here and they're like biding their time. And they're like, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Somebody messes up. I'm going to be there. And they are those two teams. And so this weekend, UCF and Kansas, they have big opportunities. If they can steal some wins away from Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, that is going to be big time. Big, big, big time. And that's what they know. That's what they've prepared for. I think they're going to be a big time threat whenever it comes to the Big 12 tournament. So, spoiler alert, I will be able to be on site for the Big 12 tournament. A lot of things going on, a lot of movement around these teams. There's some 10 quality teams here in the tournament this year. So I'm going to be on site. I'm going to be able to talk to the teams. I'm going to be able to watch the games. I'm going to be able to talk to you guys. I cannot wait. So make sure again to like and subscribe, leave comments below of what you want to see, what you want to hear from the conference tournament if you're not able to go. But I would love to see you and say hi. So if you see me out there, make sure you say hi. Um, but the conference tournament, that is going to be really telling. And that's where the teams like, I don't think talked about the three teams that are in the top five. You have Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. And I don't think that that's an accurate reflection of how good this conference is because you have teams in the top 25 that have just as many losses. And because they're in a different conference, they kind of get preferential treatment because everybody assumes the teams in those conferences are just better. To me, if you're playing three of the top five teams and you're battling with them and you're looking really good and you're doing pretty good in conference, I think you deserve a double look. Now, have they? No. And that can be discouraging if you're those teams, but also in the back of your head, you're saying, I'm playing these really good teams. If I get sent somewhere to a tournament, game on. Let me show you just how good we are. And I think right now there's four teams that if they get sent somewhere in a conference tournament, whoever's hosting, or not a conference tournament, in a regional, whoever's hosting should be very on edge to have these teams at their tournament. Kansas talked about them. UCF talked about them. Baylor, they are on a hot streak right now. Like I said, they had a tough entrance into conference play. They just weren't able to find things that were clicking. They've still been struggling with injuries. But the last few games, the last couple of series, they've been able to figure something out. Something has clicked, the flip has turned on for them, and they have just been really elevating their game. And then BYU, whenever a team's that hungry and that scrappy and has the talent to match, they are dangerous because they will steal games away from teams that are just a little bit complacent. So I think those four teams should make the tournament and they should be really deadly in the tournament themselves. And then just talking about like the athletes that we have in the conference, it has been such a fun time to watch. It has been so phenomenal. I feel like this is like my farewell tour. Like conference isn't over yet. We're not wrapping up yet, but just the way that the Big 12 has performed this year, I think it's exceeded a lot of people's expectations, exceeded mine in the best possible way. But I cannot wait to see what the conference tournament looks like because it's not a three-game series. It's you and me, let's go at it. Let's see who wins. And it's very much a postseason preview. And these teams are good. And I'm looking forward to it. But I'm really, really looking forward to the matches between UCF and OU and then Oklahoma State and Kansas. But I think the best one this weekend is going to be BYU and Baylor. That to me is going to be the one to watch. As always, I'm your host. I'm Nicole Mendes. Thank you guys so much for watching 10 Teams, 2 Rings. It's a Big 12 conference podcast on the Softball America Networks. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.